Hi everybody, this is a video to explain how the externalities diagrams actually work in practice. How do you read this diagram and how do you know where to put in different equilibriums and what that means? So just remembering that with externalities you're thinking about bubbles. It's as if somebody's doing something inside a bubble. So here, for instance, a business, they are working inside this bubble but they're polluting. So inside the bubble, there are private costs and private benefits because of this transaction that's going on. But there are also costs and benefits for people outside the bubble, and we call those externalities. So, for example, this pollution might be bad for the health of this person who lives nearby and for animals which are in the area. So that's the first thing to remember. The next thing to remember is when we're drawing these diagrams, which I showed you how to do in another video, we need to know what this means, marginal. And as we explained before, the word marginal in economics means an additional amount. You can think of a sheet of paper and the margin is the additional bit of paper along the left-hand side. That's the margin. So when we have this diagram, we first of all need to think about where will output occur if there is no intervention by the government. So if the market is just left free to do what it wants to do, where will output occur? And we call this the free market level of output. And this is determined by what the private people want to do, so the people inside the bubble. Remember that when we're in here, this is to do with private costs and private benefits. And the private entity, in this case the firm, will want to operate where their marginal private costs are equal to their marginal private benefits. And on this diagram, the marginal private cost is this curve and the marginal private benefit is this curve. So if we find the intersection here, we can see that this will be, we'll call this Q, and this is the free market level of output. And I'm going to explain to you why that is. So what would happen is along this axis, we can see the level of output. Let's imagine that this factory is producing cars. And along here, we imagine numbers. So it's 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars, 4 cars, and so on. And we've seen that the company wants to produce at this free market level of output, which is at quantity Q. We don't know how many that is, but quantity Q here. What's happening all the way up to here is it benefits them to produce each extra car. So if we imagine that was 1 car, this is 2 cars. The reason they want to produce 2 cars is because if you read from here, you can see that at 2 cars, it benefits the company privately. And the reason for this is because at 2 cars, if we read off the graph, the private costs are this much. And for producing 2 cars, the second car, because remember it's the marginal benefit and the marginal cost. So if they choose to produce the second car, this will be the cost to the business, the extra cost. But this will be the private benefit to the business. So if you had numbers on the y-axis, you'd see that the benefit of producing that extra car is up here, and the cost to the firm of producing the extra car is down here. So they think, yes, we'd like to produce that car. If they're thinking whether to produce the third car, they do the same thing again. They see whether for the third car they need to check to see what the benefit is to the firm privately and what the cost is to the firm. And for this one, again, you just use the curves. You can see the private cost is here and the private benefit is here. And again, if you read across the graph, you would then see that their benefit is this number, which is much higher than their cost, which is this number. So they think, yes, we'll produce the third car. And in each case, because these curves are showing you the marginal private benefit, the marginal private cost, they're showing you what the benefit and cost are to the firm for that extra unit, for that additional amount of output. And all the way across here, all the time, the private benefit is greater than the private cost. And therefore, every time you say, shall we produce this car, shall we produce this car, shall we produce this car, you're always saying yes, because it benefits the firm to do that, because their benefit is higher than their cost. Once you get to this point, the benefit to the company is equal to the cost to the company, so they want to produce that one. However, when you go past this point, let's imagine that this was the 9th car. They're thinking, shall we produce 9 cars? If you then look again at what's happening in the diagram and you read off the curves, you can see that for the 9th car, the benefit for the firm, private benefit, is here. For the 9th car, the cost to the firm, you don't actually need that little bit, the cost to the firm is here. And therefore, the cost to the firm of producing the 9th car is higher than the benefit of producing the car to the firm, which is here. So suddenly, the cost of making the extra car is greater than the benefit. So they don't want to produce that. It will be the same with the 10th car, the same with the 11th. They don't want to produce those. And that's why then the firm wants to produce here at the free market level of output, which is where the marginal private cost equals the marginal private benefit. And we call this the free market level of output. Because if you went further than this, your costs to the firm, the private costs, are greater than the benefits to the firm, the private benefits. So you don't want to be here. I'll carry on explaining more about the diagram in the next video.